Welcome to the Brand Identity Design Business Podcast. My name is Jaison. I'm your host, and I've been doing this series called as the Dark Side of Entrepreneurship for quite some time. Okay, now today for a change, I'm going to be jumping away from that series to something called as AMA. Ask me anything about podcasting series. So the aim of this episode would be to actually bring important things to limelight, what podcasters face as a challenge, and what is the mess which is being created in the process. Now, I have heard actually countless people speaking, professional podcasters, encouraging others to get into the podcasting game, but they don't actually highlight what are the things which actually come along with it. So today I'm going to debunk some of those things and not debunk, probably highlight some of those messy side things and share with you. So today's topic is unveiling the messy side of podcasting. I tried coming up with a headline which was easy. This is the best I could think of, and we wanna pull away the curtains and show you the untidiness related to podcasting. So let's actually say hi to Leslie. Leslie, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Jason, on this dreary day on the East Coast, but doing well. I'm really looking forward to this. And you know me, I'm always pushing you to do more and more of just having your own show and you being the guest. So it's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. One of the most messiest thing which can happen to a podcaster, especially when you do interviews, is not to have a guest show up on time or a guest who is not able to make it for a recording. So this is really messy is because it puts the podcaster in a really bad situation because either you have to look out for another guest or you would have to be creative and come up with something interesting. So Heather, if you're interested in coming up, feel free to come up. We're just having a just fun conversation, and I'm just sharing the messy side of podcasting. If you do get the opportunity, please share this space so that you can invite more of your friends to join this conversation. All right. So let's actually begin. So the very first thing which I want to highlight is actually buying the wrong stuff. Over the course of 1.5 2 years, I've actually invested a lot of money buying different items, which is either not compatible or it did not ever serve the purpose. So so I would encourage, and this is a really big mess because some of those items which I have purchased I have actually never used. It is still locked inside my cupboard or a storage facility, whatever. It's just lying there gathering dust. And the only reason I ended up, buying these items is because I felt this is the right thing to go ahead with. So, so when it comes to equipment, and when I say equipments, the things which I'm going to be highlighting is first, the very first one is a microphone. Second would be an audio interface. So all this music, which you hear me fading in and out, making my guest's voice louder or less louder, whatever. All these controls are being managed by something called as an audio interface. So if you pick up the wrong audio interface, okay, depending upon what you're trying to achieve out of it, it can be a big mess. Okay, so I would highly encourage you to speak to somebody who has been doing this or doing exactly what you intend to do and get their advice. The third point which I want to highlight is that different kind of microphones offer different benefits. So it's important that you pick up the right mic. So under the comment section of this specific episode which we are doing, if you go through the event comments or the event notes, I have actually highlighted something called as microphone polar patterns. I've also listed down a few links to videos which I found simple and easy to understand. I've also listed down some blogs which you can go through to understand what are the different kind of microphones and what it's intended to do. Now, polar patterns is something which you probably may not have heard many podcasters highlight about. So, Polar patterns is very interesting subject because what it does, it actually shows you like a visual representation of what the microphone is capable of doing. So it's like an illustration in a 360-degree view. I don't know how else to explain it. You have to look at it to understand. So the example which I have given under the event notes, I have actually demonstrated. It's actually, this is not my picture. This is from like media, likemindmedia.com. I found this image, but I think the most of the images which are available online does not actually show you justice because it just shows a circle with just some weird ass diagram in it. So what I have done is that I have actually demonstrated it a little better. We want to look at it from a 360 degree view, wherein the microphone is right at the center, and the waveform which is highlighted around is the way how the mic is capturing the sound from either from the front of the mic or from the back of the mic. So that's what it represents. I don't know how else to explain this to you. Just go through the blogs and the videos which I have sent you. You would be able to figure out the polar patterns of a microphone. The reason why this is so messy is because I have around 3 to 4 microphones I have purchased which had the wrong polar pattern, and because of that I can't use it, at least for the time being. So the most ideal mic you have to look for when you look for a microphone is to buy a dynamic microphone. So to just give you a little gist on what a dynamic microphone is, it's widely used for podcasting, live performance, or even in a recording studio. So typically, a dynamic microphone has a cardioid, or I don't know how to pronounce this. I call it cardioid something polar pattern. This means the sound is primarily captured from the front of the microphone and it rejects sounds from the rear. So, for an example, you are hearing me from the front. If I shift the microphone on the side, you would not be able to hear me very clearly. So, this is called as a dynamic microphone. So, if you are trying to get into podcasting, it's always recommended to buy a microphone which is dynamic in nature. What it does is that it helps you to have optimum sound quality, and it kind of rejects the background noise or the ambient noise which is in your surrounding. So, for an example, if I switch on my fan, if you hear this noise, if this was an omnidirectional microphone, when I say an omnidirectional microphone, that means it captures noise from the entire surrounding, irrespective where you speak into it. This is typically good, during those old times wherein musicians wanted to actually create music, and they did not have a lot of microphones around. So what they used to do is they used to have the microphone right at the center, and they used to play all these instruments, and the mic used to capture the music very creatively. That's how recording used to happen. And if they wanted to actually highlight or emphasize a specific instrument, they used to come closer to the mic. Okay, so that's an omnidirectional microphone. So most people, what they do is they end up buying the omnidirectional microphone, and what it does is that it captures everything from the surrounding, and it becomes a total fucking mess. So I would recommend buy a dynamic microphone. Second thing which I want to also highlight, when you're actually buying a dynamic microphone, do not buy those cheap ass ones. The reason being is because microphone needs to have some sort of weight to it. And I'm not saying like heavy. When you actually place it on your desk, okay, when you're moving moving stuff around, like, let's say your papers, you're typing in your computer, whatever, the microphone should be intact and it should be steady. Okay, now imagine if you buy cheap, the ones which are cheap, what it does is that when you speak, I don't know if you're able to sense this, but this is what it does. It just makes these weird noise. It does not have a stable shock mount proof. And it's very disturbing because the whole recording goes waste. So invest on a good microphone, and invest on a microphone, which is of a good quality. And while you're investing in this microphone, try to see if you can get a microphone with a stand. If you are trying to do something using a Mac or a laptop at home, if this is what your intent is, then I would recommend to do follow these instructions. You should be okay. Next point which I want to highlight about microphone is that when you buy these microphones, try to look for microphones which are USB compatible as well as XLR compatible. Okay, I'm going to repeat that again. It has to be USB compatible and XLR compatible. I'll explain why. Okay, so when you start off initially, generally people who start with podcasts, they all generally have a limited budget in most cases, and they're just trying to experiment just for the fuck of it, just to see if it works out. So when you start off, okay, start with an USB mic, something which is plug and play. Usually, microphone manufacturers, if they have USB and XLR compatibility both, they would usually give you adapters and wires necessary to connect it. Now, let's talk about USB mics. Okay, USB mics are pretty, simple. Ensure that your USB flash drive is always up to date. Connect the USB port to your microphone and then connect it to your computer. Now, the messy side here is that most people assume that by just connecting the microphone, everything magically happens. Now, in most cases, it does. In Windows, I have not seen problems. But with Mac users, what I have noticed is that the sound card does not actually get automatically registered at times. So you have to always go to your audio settings and select the right input. When I say input, your microphone input, you always have to manually change it. And it creates a lot of mess because they keep troubleshooting. They think the microphone is the issue, but they don't realize that's an additional step which has to be taken. Okay, which kind of waste time, stuff like that. So just rephrasing everything again, buy a dynamic microphone. Okay, have a USB and XLR compatibility. If you're wondering what is XLR, all those musical instruments and studios what they use are XLR ports. It's like a 3-pointy thing. It looks quite huge, but audio interfaces actually is compatible with these XLR inputs. So in the near future, if you were to migrate over to an audio interface so that you increase your production quality, then it's good to have a mic which is compatible to that so that you don't have to keep reinvesting again and again. This is the reason I'm saying buy something which has both compatibilities. There are also microphones which allow you to use it differently based on their polar patterns. So for an example, Blue Yeti, I think, is one of those mics which allows you to, give me a sec, I'll tell you. So it's omnidirectional, bidirectional, and it's also cardioid, something based. So there is a small knob on the microphone, and you can adjust how the mic is actually picking up the noise. Okay, so refer to the sheet which I have uploaded, and you should be able to understand what it is. If you hear something called as bidirectional microphones are very good. If you're sitting with your friend opposite to one another and you have a microphone right at the center. You remember, Leslie, I had shared this example with you how to use your Blue Yeti. You remember when I highlighted? Do you remember this? We had a conversation a few months back. I guess she might be driving, I guess. All right, so anyway, so bidirectional microphones where the microphone would be in the center, and let's say that let's focus on a coffee situation, like coffee shop situation, and let's say that you guys are recording something, and you keep the microphone right at the center, and you change the polar point to a bidirectional thing. Okay, I know it sounds super technical. If you're trying to get into podcasting, you kind of need to be aware of these things. If you don't know, you don't have to be a master in this. You just need to have a general sense of what it means. So choose bidirectional. So in this way, audio from the front of the microphone and from the back of the microphone, both of them gets registered, and it rejects the audio quality which has been coming from the side. So that's what a bidirectional microphone does. So depending upon the situation, you would have to use different microphones. So that's why I say it's messy, because remember, you would not be able to get it, correctly or accurately the very first time, unless and until somebody is absolutely guiding you to make that happen. In most cases, I have seen that, people just simply don't like to follow instructions. They like to do their own thing, and there is nothing wrong in it. Just remember, you have to keep reinvesting again and again till you get the right spot or the right product which is going to serve your purpose. All right. I want to take a pause there. I have realized that when I do monologues, if I consistently speak, people actually get bored. So I'm going to ask Leslie. Leslie, do you have any questions you would like to ask me about what I have shared so far? Hopefully.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. No, I'm listening as I'm multitasking, tacking up my horse to go running. But yeah, I have a couple of things. I noticed that I don't even use my microphone, and the quality on Riverside is so much better now. They've really upped the ante with the quality of the listening experience and the recording, that I'm kind of at a crossroads. So certain pieces of equipment I'm actually not using.
All right. So that's a very valid point, but you are actually misunderstanding the point here. So Riverside is acting as a medium just to record the audio. Now, it's possible you might be at an acoustically right environment, and it doesn't have any hiccups capturing the audio directly from the microphone input on your computer. Okay. But there is a possibility most people may not have the same acoustic treatment around. They may have children's in the background, or similar to me, it sometimes rains, people yell, say shit, weird ass shit. A lot of things are going around where I stay. So I cannot actually just rely on that recording. I need to ensure that the audio goes through properly the way I want it to. So that's why you have to be a little careful in as to what you invest in. And like I said, it's all about experimenting. Everyone's needs are different. For me, a dynamic microphone makes sense because I want the audio to be picked up right in the front. It gives me better leverage and control. Okay, moving on to the next point, guys. The next thing which I want to let you know is that there are a couple of different kind of mics. So since we are just speaking on microphone, I'll just highlight that. The first one which I was highlighting for podcasting idly is dynamic. There are also microphone called as condenser mics, ribbon mics, lavalier mics. Lavalier mics are the ones which you just connect it to your a shirt, or you pin it next to you. It has an omnidirectional polar pattern because an individual can move their head, and if they don't have an omnidirectional, that means a 360 degree a polar point, then it would not be able to capture the audio of the individual, because people move around, they shake their heads, stuff like that. I hope that makes sense. What is an omnidirectional thing. So lavalier mics. Then you have something called a shotgun mics. These are the ones typically used for broadcasting. In television, you may have seen this guy holding this boomstick with a long microphone in the front. That's called as a shotgun microphone. Anyway, it's very interesting. I have a lot of links which have been listed on the show notes and the event notes. Please utilize those to increase your knowledge. You should be able to get a lot of an idea how to go about it. So when you actually buy all these interesting things like your cables and when you buy your audio interface, your microphone, your power adapter, and it requires you to buy even more things. You need to have something which connects to your computer. You also need to have something which goes as a power input. You need to have something which connects your headphone. If you're connecting a mobile phone, that's also another wire which goes out. And then sometimes you may not have that many ports on your computer. Then you would have to buy a USB hub. A USB hub is like a one solo unit which has multiple USB ports in it. You can connect that to your laptop. But it's also possible you may have a Thunderbolt, or you may have USB-C, and maybe the USB hub comes in a different, a USB, some other ports, maybe, whatever. What I'm simply trying to say is that when you get into podcasting, it is a fucking mess because there is a lot and lot of wire which you revolve around. And if you're one of those individuals who like need something clean and tidy, okay, and if you want a studio like production, if you're investing something heavily on that, then be prepared to be organized. When I say organized, like you need to invest on something like cable ties, keep things efficient, not efficient, but cable management sleeves, cable organizer, cable ties. What it does is that it kind of, reduces the chaos a bit. It ensures that, things are properly kept around you and it does not look like a mess. Okay, so this is the messy side of podcasting, which people don't really talk about because it does involve a lot of wires. It also involves a lot of adapters. It involves a lot of plug and play. Like you have to plug things here, you have to plug things there. You have to ensure that things are plugged in the right spot, the right way. If something is disconnected, things should stuff doesn't work, and you probably have to just restart things over. I'm not trying to scare you, but you need to have a little technical know-how of how these things work. Okay, you need to know what are the different kind of port: USB A, micro USB, USB Type C, Lightning, Thunderbolt. Okay, you need to know what kind of ports your laptop has. You need to also know what kind of ports your audio interface has. You need to know what kind of ports are being used on your microphone or headphones, stuff like that. For an example, let me give you an example. If you have a 3.5 mm jack, remember there are two kind of 3.5 mm jacks. One is a TRS and the other one is a TRRS. Okay, when you hear it, you would be like, what the hell does this mean? Very simple. If you look at the 3.5 mm jack on your headphones, if it has two lines, okay, that means it's only for listening to music, okay, and to hear stuff. If it has three lines, that means it's a TRRS port. That means it also has a microphone. Now, I never heard or realized about this. I never actually came to know about this, till the time I bought my audio interface, because my audio interface to connect my mobile phone to my audio interface, it required a TRRS port, and I kept buying the TRS port. So I have a lot of TRS ports which I ended up buying. It was not cheap, which went waste just because I did not understand what it meant. The reason why you need those three liney things, why you need this to connect to your cell phone, is because the phone, when you connect to your mobile phone, you're expecting the person not just to hear what you're saying, but you also want to hear what they respond back as well. That's why you need TRRS port. Now, nobody gives you this advice or guidance, by the way. You fall into this mess, and that's how you know what you need to buy and what not to buy. So again, so equipment compatibility is not easy. I think it takes time, but eventually people figure it out. But it takes time. So if you want to get into podcasting, you need to know how to use a computer. You should be well aware of ports. You should also know how to use the right elements to connect all these things together. Like, right, when I say elements, I mean wires to connect all these things together. Whew. I'm thirsty. So if anybody is interested in asking a question, please raise your hand and I would be happy to bring you up. I generally don't do monologues, as you know. I'm trying to educate as much as possible. So I want to play a song, the same song which you heard in the beginning, so that I can have a sip of water. All right. So, Angelica, thank you so much for coming on stage. If anybody else wants to join me, you're welcome to come up. Even you, Sonal, if I see you down there. All right, Angelica, do you have a question, or would you like to contribute to this conversation?
I have a question because I came in at the tail end of the conversation, but I also want to comment because I recently had a podcast room that I started, uh, and I just used the computer audio using StreamYard, and I realized that it sounded ridiculously awful after I heard it. And so, what you mentioned here about knowing what mic and all of this, I have a Yeti that I was planning on connecting for this next podcast that I was going to be doing. I usually just use my iPhone, but I wanted to. It's easier for me to see if I use my computer. So that's why I was using my computer and the sound there. But I was just wondering, Jason, can you just repeat again the different types of mics that we should use? Because I definitely didn't. I came in at the tail end of that, and I'm going to be doing another podcast soon, and I want to use my computer. So appreciate you first of all for letting me come up. This is really awesome information. And I hope you guys do more rooms because I'll be coming back.
Angelica, thank you so much for being here. Okay, so I'm glad, first of all, that you understand the challenges which I was trying to highlight. Okay, so I feel Blue Yeti is a good mic. It's not bad. Most people, most podcasters would say otherwise, but I still feel it's a good mic because it has USB connectivity. Okay, and I'm trying to look for the polar pattern which I was referring to. I'll let you know the different kind of mics. Okay, you have to actually buy a dynamic microphone. DYNAMIC. Dynamic microphone is what you have to buy if you want to get into podcasting. Now, remember, when you buy a dynamic microphone, it has to be USB and XLR compatible. That's all I'm asking. Dynamic microphone, and it has to be USB and XLR compatible. So that means it would have both the ports at the back. Okay, now there are options available in the market which will help you to take care of this. Okay, so do not worry about it. So let's actually look at Blue Yeti polar pattern. All right, so let's look for some images for Blue Yeti. Okay, so Blue Yeti has the following polar pattern. So I think there is a knob somewhere on the Yeti. Have you noticed the knob which has those weird heart sign, ring sign, circle sign somewhere?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So,
Yes.
okay.
And it has the echo.
All right, all right. So I'm gonna play something for you on the event notes. Give me a sec. Let me just save this. This is called as the polar pattern. So what you have to do is you have to actually select the one which has a heart symbol to it. That's called as cardioid. Okay, now that's the one which you have to choose, because if you choose that, it's very ideal if you were to do restream and you are the only person who is speaking. So it will be very focused. You would sound exactly like the way I am sounding at this moment. Once you connect yourself on Restream, though, what you have to do is you have to go into those three dots which are on the left where you see your picture, or there is something at the bottom of your screen which has video and audio settings at the bottom. Either or, like wherever you get the option, easy. Okay, go into those settings, go into audio settings, and you have to manually select the input and output as Blue Yeti. Because if I'm not mistaken, the Blue Yeti does have the headphone jack also at the bottom, right? Angelica? Ah, I lost you. All right, maybe she's checking out the image, whatever. So yeah, so that's about compatible.
No, no, no. I don't have it. I don't have it in front of me right now for me to see.
Okay,
Not at my house.
that's okay. That's okay. As far as I think
But
so, it does have an
when I
option
get
at the
home, I'll check
bottom.
it out.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'm gonna,
Thank you.
yeah, no
So
problem.
what if I can I ask one more question, or am I
Sure.
being bogarting the stage? I have another microphone question because that's if I'm the only one that's doing the talking from my laptop. But let's say somebody else is talking from their phone and from their phone, then it should be okay, right?
See, I would not be able to really say what's gonna happen when somebody else does it, because it depends upon what kind of background they are in, what kind of equipment they would be using. Okay, generally, if the opposite person whom you are actually, okay, generally, if you're gonna be speaking to somebody over Restream, I think typically a wired headphone with an inbuilt mic solves it. That's all the opposite person requires. Okay, and a closed off space wherein it does not have too much background. So I don't know if the people whom you're speaking to on Restream, if they are your guest or you're trying to do like a duo podcast or something. I don't know about that, but it's good for even for your guest to invest in a nice USB based microphone so that you guys both get good quality input when you do streaming. Go ahead.
No, I think that that's good information to have because um, one of my friends uses their phone, so I'm gonna suggest that they use a computer and have that capability. So I'm using StreamYard. I guess they're very similar, Restream and StreamYard.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same Restream and StreamYard. I think just the UI is slightly different, but in terms of functionality, both of them kind of does the exact same thing. Now it's very crucial, like I said, buy the right microphone. Okay, know those polar patterns. Ensure that cables and everything is streamlined, all put together. Okay, and before you start StreamYard or Restream, whichever option you like to go for, ask your guest over a phone call to go to their audio settings and video settings and select the right input and output, audio in and audio out. Okay, so audio in is the microphone. This is audio in, and when you're hearing me speak, that's audio out. So most microphones which are USB based does have a option to connect your headphones directly, and your headphones doesn't matter if it has a microphone or if it does not have a microphone. Okay, as long as it's a wired microphone, you would not experience any issues. There are also highly educated people who are out there who try to actually make even things a bigger mess by connecting it to Bluetooth. I mean, the headphones. Guys, I want you to understand just shit does not work when you try doing wired and Bluetooth. Okay, the computer can't fucking understand what you're doing. So if you ever try connecting Bluetooth headphones and wondering like why the fuck I can't hear shit, because you're a total douche for doing this. If there is an option to use wired, if you're using wired, please use wired options so that you make the very best out of it. Okay, I've also heard people. This Bluetooth is a complete fucking mess. I had a lot of guests, does this mess, and it fucks up the whole vibe and gives me a hard time. This is one of the reason I actually do like a sound check 30 minutes in advance, so that we can sort out those mess. Would you believe that I have to actually spend 2 hours in total to do like a show, half an hour before, then the show, and sometimes 15 to 20 minutes post show as well. So roughly about 3 hours, I guess. Whatever. So does that answer your question, Angelica, or would you like me to say anything else? Any other questions you have?
Yes, that answers my question. Thank you so much.
All right, please continue to be on stage. If anybody else has questions, please do not hesitate to come up. And Leslie, at any point you have any questions, please do not hesitate to highlight. Moving on to the next one is soundproofing and acoustics. Okay, now maybe the word itself sounds like, really something huge, major, does require a lot of investment, but this shit is actually cheap. Okay, so you may have heard about, you may have seen in studios, they have these pointy looking stuff which they have in front of their computer in their recording studio. Okay, now those things are for a purpose. What it does is that it diffuses the sound and acoustically treats the environment around you. It's inexpensive. I think it comes vacuumed in a set of 12 or 24 units. Okay, and it's made out of sponge. So when you speak, what it does is that it avoids echoes. It avoids those echoes or things, which just sounds weird. So what it does. Okay, now the messy side about it is that you have to glue this fucker to the wall. Okay, so if you are on rent, okay, be careful. Take permission from landlords before you do this, because it's going to chip away the paint if you have to move to another location, stuff like that. So that's a messy side. So you have to glue this thing. I have not come across any other method how you can have these foams around. And having foams around does not mean that you have to foam up the whole fucking place with foams and sit inside it. You will die just because of the pure heat the foam is gonna generate. It's not gonna be like a good spot to be on. Okay, so wherever you're sitting, wherever your microphone is, if you have soundproofing done, if you have the foam somewhere close to that same range or maybe head level, I think that should be good enough. So the treatment is that what it does is that it allows sound not to bounce back. So that when I'm speaking, you're just hearing me and you don't hear anything extra. So it just diffuses that audio. That's the ultimate purpose of diffusers. Now, people actually use other things for sound treatment, which is foam panels, and then you have diffusers, then you have something called as curtains. So it's like diffusing curtains. It's made out of thick material. What it does is that it does not reflect sound back. I've also seen DIY solutions. So let's say that if you're just doing audio only, you can have a lot of blankets surrounding you. Okay, and what it does is that it soundproof the shit. It just helps you to have a better experience. Okay, now again, like I said, it's messy because you would have your cables lying around everywhere. You would be sitting right in the center of all this mess. And to add a little more mess to the layer, you're having these acoustic foams around, or the sheets, or whatever diffusers around. So it's a total mess. So if you like being in such mess and enjoying recording stuff and engaging with your guests, then podcasting is right for you. Otherwise, please do not get into this, because everything is glorified outside, but that's not actually true. It's a mess. Okay, if you like mess and if you embrace the mess, then it can lead to something transformative. Okay, you would have good, remarkable sound. Now, many podcasters would also say that sound does not really matter. I have noticed ton of content which does not have highly produced sound, and they may have gone viral, or they may have an excess number of downloads. What I tell to those freaking dumb professionals who are call themselves as podcasters is, you might be able to bullshit people once, but there's no guarantee that people will continue listening to that bullshit. So what I would encourage you folks is to invest in sound, because imagine if it's messy. Okay, if there is a lot of background noise, it distracts people away from the content which you work so hard to produce. I am positive you guys agree with me that to speak for about 45 minutes to an hour takes a lot of planning, preparation, and it takes a lot of balls. Okay, would you like to throw that gold like content away just because you are disappointed, or you don't see the value in good sound? People tune away. If you hear something right now in my background, that's actually rain. Now, if this was an omnidirectional mic, you would have heard this more clearly. Now, because this is a cardioid mic, that's why you don't hear it much, but it's there. It's picking it up, but not to a large extent. Okay, I can reduce the volume of the gain. When I say gain volume, it's picking up my voice in a certain way. I can lower down the gain. If I lower down the gain, you would hear my voice, but you will hear the surrounding rain voice slightly less. Okay, so if you get what I'm trying to say. So that's the control and ability you have when you have the right equipment in place. So moving on to the next point is storage and fucking backup. Nobody actually tells you this is a Pandora box. Most people think that you're uploading everything to the cloud so it stays in the cloud. I have actually deleted a lot of my episodes by mistake. Just navigating and managing files. Just I don't know. I just forgot or I clicked on the wrong button. I'm a human being, I make mistakes. Okay. Now, so to avoid all of that, have some sort of backup storage. Buy an SSD card, okay, solid state drive, or create a unique folder in your computer. Give it a name like podcast, and you should be exceptionally good with creating folders and organizing those folders. Now, remember, the idea here is that if I tell you go back to episode number 12, you should be easily be able to go to episode number 12. Okay, and it should have individual folders within itself, like a folder for flyers, a folder for music. If you have played ads, a folder for ads. If you have done something extra, let's say any resources which you shared with people, now you would not remember the back of your mind that what is a link for that. So what I do is I have notes and I save those notes as additional resources in another folder. Whenever the recording is completed, I save that recording also in another folder within that folder. So what it does is that everything looks streamlined and organized. So whenever I have to come back, backtrack, either re-upload the episode or remove a copy of that episode or use a small bit-sized segment of that episode, I know exactly where to find it. So if you're not literate and if you don't know how to be organized within your computer, you would not have a good experience when it comes to podcasting, assuming you will be doing podcasting the way I do. I kind of do this every week. I have done 100 plus episodes so far, and it's a total freaking mess. Okay, but the good part is it's organized chaos. Over the course of time, I've structured my show and the things on my computer in a certain way that is streamlined. Now it's organized. The next part which I want to highlight is that if you record audio directly onto a browser, okay, which I don't do, but if you do, internet connection can fuck you up big time. So if you lose Wi-Fi, if you lose connection, or if the guest loses connection, you are in a big shit. Okay, and you would lose either the whole episode or you would have to redo things from the beginning, and you may have actually recorded one of the best content out there, and the world would not be able to hear that ever again. So I would highly encourage you to use an external device like the way I'm using right now. I use an audio interface called as a Zoom P4, not the Zoom, the video conferencing tool. This is another thing. Zoom P4. It's called as PodTrack P4, which also has an inbuilt recording option. So I am recording this on my Zoom P4. I know if the internet dies, as long as my computer is connected, I don't need the fucking internet to do anything. Unless and until I'm interviewing a guest. Okay, but I know for sure my stuff is safe and stored here. And the benefit here is that if something goes wrong, I can always go back and edit that audio and personalize it the way I want it. So that's the control and benefit it offers you. So if you are an average individual who has never done any kind of sound editing, if you don't understand WAV files, MP3 files, MP4 files, WMA files, those kind of AAC files, okay, this is gonna be a total fucking mess. Okay, so I would recommend you to get used to these vocabulary which podcasters generally use for audio file formats. The reason why you need to know this, because there is a possibility your equipment where you're recording or the browser which you're using to record it may have a certain format associated to that. So I don't know what happens on Riverside. I don't know what format they record it, but I am assuming typically it should be in 44,000 kilohertz, and it should be a WAV file or an MP3 file, either of these. So that's what I'm assuming it should be. So, so depending upon your podcast host, which is either let's say Anchor, okay, or Riverside or something else, whichever platforms which are out there, you upload your podcast. They should be able to be compatible with those files, and if they are not compatible with your files, you also need to convert these files to those necessary formats. That's why you need to know about all these interesting things. So I'm gonna take a pause there, and I hope people made sense of out of this. So Leslie, do you have a question for me so far?
No, I'm good. I'm just trying to absorb and understand. And I was laughing because I know it's like the MP3, the MP4. It's definitely a different language, and it takes time to ingest and figure all of this out. But I'm really appreciating this conversation. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so Angelica, do you have a question for me so far?
So far, I'm getting the conversation. Um,
Okay, this is what you hear right now, guys. This is bad internet. Okay, this is what I'm referring to. So let's try that again, Angelica. I think we are losing you somehow there. All right. So come back. You can. So, anyways, if anybody else has questions, who Derek, and Sonal and Mohammed. If you guys have any questions, please do not hesitate to come up and ask me those questions. Nice to see you, Derek. I have sent you an email, Derek. Please go through it. If you do get the time, please respond to that. I would greatly appreciate it. So, anyways, I'm just gonna move on to the next things which I wanted to highlight. Okay, music. So remember, Spotify, Apple, these guys can really fuck you up if you use copyright music. I have learned this the hard way. I had shit ton of episodes which I was blankly using, just hip hop music or any kind of music which is easily available on Spotify. And I used to play it because it sounded cool, and I thought it was a nice idea. Okay, now although you don't get copyright strikes the way you actually get on YouTube, they just delete the whole thing. Okay, I'm telling you, they just delete the whole podcast if you end up having copyright strikes. Okay, so they would give you the opportunity to fix it. If you don't fix it on this given time, they just delete the whole thing. Okay, so what you simply need to do is buy licensable music, like the one which I just played for you in the beginning, like something like this. Okay, like this. It does cost money. Some audios are $10, some $15, some 20, some 50. It depends upon the artist and how new the song is. You can also end up, having like a subscription if you do use regularly. That's the one which I opt for. It turns out to be cheaper. The only problem is that you would have to then rely on that specific provider to give you audio, and it's not necessary that all the audio would be great. Okay, that's the only drawback. So 10 to $15, you get a license. Okay, and what happens is that have this license also saved in your folder. So for example, I have a folder for music within that folder. So let's say I'm doing this interview with Leslie. So I have a folder for Leslie. Within that folder, I have multiple other folders like sound, music, advertisement, recording, flyers, etc., etc., etc. So I'll open up the music folder, and within the music folder, I would have the exact audio which I played during the entire show. So if it was in the beginning of the show, the first half of the show, so I will mention first half and put that audio clip there. Okay, if I have played an audio on the second half or the third half, if it's different songs which I played, I'll mention all of that, and I'll ensure within those folders all licenses are also being put there. So what happens is that immediately if you get a copyright strike, and if they demand to ask you. If they ask you for license information, you would know where to find it. That's why being organized is so crucial, especially when you do podcasting. So you have to look ahead, far fetched into the future, because if you're just doing it just for the heck of it, then it might as well don't do it. You're just cluttering the whole space, making my show inaccessible to others. Because you have just a bunch of few episodes. In fact, what I would recommend you to do, plan out this whole thing, do like 50 episodes, and then stop producing it. It makes sense. At least people have 50 episodes to consume. So it makes sense that, it kind of sounds like you have put in the work and it did not work out. That's why you stopped podcasting. Okay, but don't do 2 to 3 episodes and let it die, because that affects other people who are really trying hard to be accessible to people. Okay, so yeah, I hope that makes sense. So yeah, I'm gonna actually take a pause there. I might do a part two, because there are other messy things which related to podcasting, which I want to highlight. So again, maybe I did not finish the whole thing about music. So copyright free music, although it does have the word free, doesn't mean the audio is actually free. You have to pay for it, but you don't get strikes. What I also do nowadays is that once I record the damn thing, I also upload it on YouTube, because YouTube does have a dedicated section called podcast. If you don't know, so what I do is I create an audiogram, like an audio version, a static image with wave, wave animation throughout a static image, and I upload this as a podcast. So what it does is that I get views not only from YouTube, I also get it from the audio-based platforming. So it's like a win-win. It helps to have a better reach. So yeah, that really helps. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to pause there. Is that, buy licensable music, do not take risks, because they will shut you down. And if you do qualify for an award, okay, and if you have copyright music within your show, they disqualify you also. So if you're going to be applying for awards, like, radio awards, podcast awards, whatever, please do not use copyright music, because that's gonna mess things up big time. It's good to invest in an intro music and an outro music. I generally keep switching my intro music, because depending upon the theme and the guest I'm interviewing, I kind of have like a theme to it, and I like to invest in it, because I feel every time a listener listens to my show, gets something new, a new track, something fresh, something different, something which has another vibe to it. So yeah, that makes people curious. And towards the end, I kind of play the same original track which I always kept on playing, is to make them realize that, okay, this is my show, to have some sort of commonality to it, stuff like that. So I'm going to take a pause there. I'm opening up the floor for Q&A. Anybody, there's no silly questions or stupid questions. I welcome you guys to come up and utilize my brain, use my brain to learn about podcasting, because I have actually died in this shit, doing so many things, and I have purchased so many items. I've wasted a lot of money. I have learned quite a lot of things about podcasting. You probably may want to take advantage of it. And I'm not charging you any money for doing this. Okay, so please take advantage of it. So I'm going to take a pause there, and we will be wrapping up our show very soon. So let's hear from Leslie. So, Leslie, do you have a question for me by any chance? Okay, so this thing is called as a radio silence. If you are a podcaster, you need to 100% avoid this radio silence. So, the messy side of podcasting is that you have to keep speaking even if you don't want to. Okay, that's a messy side. You have to come up with something. You would end up saying stupid stuff, but you have to consistently keep speaking, because radio silence pulls people away. Imagine if you're listening to this audio clip and I go, now, as a listener, you would be wondering, what the fuck just happened? Did I lose my connection? Okay, did my headphones stop working? Am I out of charge? What the fuck happened? Okay, and people might end up, just leaving the app, not listening to your beautiful content which you created, stuff like that. So you have to consistently speak, stuff like that. So let's actually move on to Angelica. So do you have a question? Is there anything you like to contribute?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I did have a bad moment with the internet. So yeah, internet will mess you up, and I got kicked out of the room. So yeah, I do have a question though, in regards to switching files when you have, let's say I have StreamYard on, and I do want to put the music on, and will that, is there something that I need to switch out of before I put the music on, or is it something that you could just easily have at the beginning of the show?
I'm so sorry. So, yeah, okay. So, if you have the paid version of StreamYard or Restream or whichever video based broadcasting platforms which are out there, it does give you the option to download the video as well as the audio. Once you download this, okay, you can use any sort of editing software and you can add the audio in the beginning and towards the end. Now this is good for people who does not want to invest quite a lot on an interface, an audio interface. Okay, but audio interfaces does not cost much. The one which I'm currently using, I think it costed me around 300 to 350 bucks. It's slightly expensive here in India. Yeah, so that's the money which I spend to buy this audio interface. What it does is that, for an example, while we are speaking, okay, we can go ahead and look, it can be like an intro music like this. Welcome, guys, you're listening to so and so, and you can increase the volume, don't say anything, and you can gradually fade out the music like the one that I am doing, and I can increase the volume again, I can reduce it again. Total fucking
I
control.
like it. I like it.
So I
So
would have
what
been
kind of audio in?
interface, yeah, audio
Go ahead.
interface. So this is the control which I'm speaking about. So you would be able to do this on StreamYard or Restream or whichever video based broadcasting platforms, connected to a computer then and there itself. You do not have to worry about editing. The reason I invested in this equipment because I don't want to fucking edit anything. The reason being because it is time consuming and I don't want to become a perfection monster. And the third thing, you are not getting paid to do any of this stuff. The client, not the client, the guest whom you're interviewing is not giving you a single penny for editing all this stuff. Why waste money and resources for them? Instead, let's be creative. That's why you have the audio interface, and you control things. I can control my volume, for an example. I can increase my volume or I can reduce my volume. Okay, all this control is right there in your hand. So that's what an audio interface does. I would recommend you to buy the Zoom PodTrack P4. Zoom PodTrack P4, one of the holy grail of devices I have ever seen. There are also other devices which are available, but I found this to be the absolutely best because it's made in fucking Japan, and this guys knows their stuff. The UI is very simple. The thing here is you need to have a decent understanding of how knobs work, what is gain and what is less gain. So let me demonstrate this with an example. Angelica, say something. I'm going to show you what is gain. Go ahead.
Howdy, how you doing?
Okay, continue speaking. Don't pause.
Okay. I did the unthinkable. I made the sound go away, and that's against the law in podcasting. So I shall continue talking until you tell me to Stop. And
So,
then you will soon get tired of me.
okay, take a pause there. So, while she was speaking, while Angelica was speaking, you heard her voice either peaking too high or going very low. So, what happens is that some guests or some people whom you're interviewing are complete dumb fucks. And no matter how much you tell them that keep your microphone close, they simply just don't understand. So, for such individuals, I would like to have control wherein I can increase the volume from my side. And see, when I say when I abuse them, I don't mean it out of disrespect. It is just frustrating because you do send out instructions and people tend to not follow it, even though it's written in simple English, even though you have tried communicating this. So, as a podcaster, remember, if you're going to be dealing with people, nobody, not all of them, but some people would give you a really hard time. Okay, so be prepared for this, because this is the messy side of podcasting which people don't tell you about. You need to have a little understanding about things. So I exhausted myself in the beginning making them understand, can you be close to your mic because I can't hear you. I want to ensure the recording is done properly. I tried and exhausted myself, and I came up with a solution by just buying an audio interface. In this way, you have better control. If you have noticed on StreamYard or Restream, if you have noticed, Angelica, when you log in on the left hand side where you see your picture, it also has a volume slider to it. So at any given moment, if your guest audio is not peaking in very high, you can always slide it either to increase it or to decrease it manually. That's the same volume knob which I'm referring to. You have it on audio interfaces. What it does is that it gives you creative control either to bump it up or to reduce it down to an extent, it's hearable. So yeah, so those kind of things. So I'm going to take a pause there again. Just Angelica, do you have another question you'd like to ask? Radio silence.
Yes, I do. What was the name? Yeah, that's you know why. I'm sorry. I was taking notes in my notes at the same time. I should have yeah, just invested in bringing a pencil and paper. But I just need the name of that interface again.
Yeah, so it's Zoom, like the
I'd
video
appreciate if I
conferencing
could get
tool,
the
like the
name.
Zoom ZOOM, but it's a Japanese company. It's not the video
Uh-huh.
meeting thing. ZOOM. Name of the equipment is
Yeah.
PodTrack.
Uh-huh.
PodTrack. PodTrack.
Au-
Maybe it has a
Outtrack?
C or
What is it?
maybe it just has a K. I don't know. I don't remember exactly. Oh, it does
Oh,
only
it's
have a K.
PodTrack?
Yeah, PodTrack PodTrack P4. I will actually leave the image on the event notes so that it's actually easy for you folks. Zone PodTrack
That's nice.
P4. All right. So
PodTrack with the P as in potato.
yeah, P as in Papa number 4.
Okay.
Okay, so I am just gonna go
Okay.
to. So this is how we avoid radio silence. Okay, we have to just keep yapping, saying something or the other. I've posted
Okay.
on the
Continue.
notes zoomcorp.com. Just click on this link. You should be able to see this image. It's a beautiful equipment. The reason I like it is because it's reliable, made in Japan, and it does have a lot of control. You can play music in between. You can have around 4 people recorded at the same time. You can connect to your mobile phone. That's how I was playing music in the beginning. I can't play it now because we want to avoid copyright. Okay, and so you can have your phone connected, you can have your computer connected, and you can simultaneously record yourself and another friend, and you can use the whole 4 ports. And it also has these individual headphone jacks so that everyone gets their own headphones and they should be able to hear it based on their preference. It's pretty interesting. That's what an audio interface does. All right, so I don't know. Did you get the link, Angelica? I just posted it on the event notes. All right, perhaps no. Yes. All right. All right. So Leslie is back. Leslie, do you have a question before we wrap things up?
No, I think you've covered a lot of territory, a lot to absorb. So thank you, Jason. Appreciate today.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Having problems with with
Yeah, that's why I say do not
LinkedIn.
rely
But yeah, I
on on internet, because it can mess you up. Go ahead, Angelica.
really appreciate all the information, and I followed you, Jason, so we could communicate further because I think this is very valuable. I appreciate all your information.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I also sent you an invite. So, yeah, thank you. I appreciate this very, very much. And thank you, Sonal, for that message. I really appreciate it. I see Rose there down in the audience. So, Rose, you came in a little late, but I was sharing the messy side, the sweaty side of podcasting, which people usually don't speak about. So, next week, I had a guest scheduled, but due to scheduling issues, something happened, and my guest is not able to make it even next week. So what I would do is actually I would do a part 2 of the same thing and share with you even other messy items when it comes to podcasting, which I have come across, which people usually don't speak about. Once you understand all these messy things, I think you can consciously and collectively take a decision whether you actually want to get into this, because it's not easy. And I'm not trying to provoke or stop anybody from becoming a podcaster. That's not the intent. The intent is to tell you what really happens and what you have to be prepared for. So if you don't possess or don't have the skill set, you would feel exhausted and you will feel like this shit is not working out for me. I am not enjoying podcasting. There's something wrong with me. People don't get it. Whatever. Hi, Rose. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Jason, I'm so upset with myself that I signed up for it because I was looking forward to this, and I totally got sidetracked. But I just was struck by what you said, exhausting, and I was just like wondering what was the most exhausting part for you.
Okay, so the most exhausting part. Let's take this episode for an example. So the most exhausting part about this episode is that 90 people said yes to attend an event, and still
Mm.
only 4 to 5 people show up. Okay. Now, why you feel exhausted is because you have been marketing the episode for almost a week. There's nothing wrong. Okay, people can make their preferences and choice. I'm saying if you are not planning on attending the event, just don't say yes, because it fucks up my analytics. It you can't make out like who's gonna show up, who's gonna not gonna show up, and you're doing this to entertain people so that you have a better leverage, stuff like that. So that's one. Second point being, no matter how structured and how carefully you want the show to be premised around, it would never ever flow in the same way. You would end up saying something early, or you would say something towards the end. It'll be a clusterfuck. It's not gonna follow in sequence, irrespective how well you plan this stuff. So it's exhausting. Third, the place where I stay, the weather is usually quite warm, and it is unbearable to actually sit in the heat and speak for an consistent hour, not be able to cool yourself off. So that's why I said it's exhausting. It's really, really.
Well, I've had that happen before where like 280 people signed up for the event and only like 23 showed up or whatever. I mean, this stuff happens like all the time. And yeah, people like might think they're gonna come, but then it's further ahead, and then they forget about it. Like there's no reminder. This is the issue I think that maybe LinkedIn can address, is where like sending out reminders that, oh, this is approaching, like come join us. There's no such thing here on LinkedIn to remind people, because if they signed up like a week in advance, trust me, they're gonna forget about it. And Yeah, so I think this is something maybe that we can bring up to LinkedIn's attention as well, if because this whole audio events thing is fairly new, actually. It's a new endeavor that LinkedIn has launched, and so maybe they're still in the experimentation phase. I wouldn't take it too personally, but I think if you I don't know if you recorded it, I would love like to listen to the recording, or like listen to the podcast itself. Is this part of your podcast?
Yeah, this call is being recorded and monitored for quality and training purposes. Yes, Rose.
Yeah.
We are
So I
recording
would
as
love
we speak.
to hear it on the podcast when you send it out. But yeah, it happens all the time. Like that happened to us. Hi, Angelica. We Angelica and I also host like a collaborative event together. So sometimes it happens. But yeah, I can understand.
Definitely. It's normal.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's I think I've gone to some of your other events and a lot of people would come. So this is just a one off, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not really upset. I'm just saying is that LinkedIn has a limitation with the number of invitation you can potentially send. So the reason I'm upset is because you say yes, but you don't show up, but my invitation is being waste. I can only send 1,000 invites a single week. So I could have potentially shared that invitation to somebody else who could have attended, but I could not reach that individual because you said yes. We could have avoided that.
Right.
But anyways,
Yeah.
those are the things which happen. So as a podcaster, remember, people are not gonna love your shit always. There would be times nobody would show up, and there have been times, especially when I used to do rooms on Clubhouse. I used to stream simultaneously on Clubhouse too, and I used to also do a live stream directly on Twitter Spaces as well. So we used to do three kind of streamings: LinkedIn Audio, Clubhouse, and Twitter. All of them combined real time at the same time. What I realized, it was a complete total waste of time to do those other streams because people simply don't turn out. The reason being either it's a topic or sometimes people just love your shit initially and then they get bored of it. So as a podcaster, remember, you always have to be entertaining, come up with new things which people are excited about, and speak freely. I have noticed the moment you speaking freely, expressing your point of view, then people listen. I've made a lot of close friends that way. So anyways,
Yeah,
go ahead.
absolutely. I think if it's too scripted, I think it might be also a hindrance. I think if you are genuine to speak from the heart, um, yeah, I don't know. I want to launch a podcast. Actually, this is something I've been sitting on for a while, and yeah, I appreciate your honesty because just thinking that it's going to be easy, it's pretty naive to think to go into it thinking, oh, I love to talk. I love to talk about different topics. I'm very passionate. I think I have a unique perspective on things. Let me launch a podcast. It doesn't guarantee, success. It doesn't guarantee, even if you're putting out quality content, it doesn't mean, you're gonna have a devoted audience. Unfortunately, I don't know how it works. Like if I could rig the game, I would, but it's really tricky to there's only a few handful of podcasters that actually are the top like 1%. So
So true. I personally don't aim to be on the top or something of that sort. My aim is to practice public speaking, actually interview my guests, and if there is a possibility, I can actually have them hire me for my design services. I can make money off it. So I personally don't actually care how much spread the podcast has, as long as I'm able to make a living off it. Something or the other. That's all I really care about. So, people would have their own preferences. I think the first thing, if you were to start doing a podcast, is to find out which category you want to dominate. Most people just get into the topics and start a show, give it like a good name, and just go ahead. You want to find out which category you fall under, because when you actually apply for awards or if you qualify for awards, that's the first question they're going to ask you. Which category does your podcast fall under? And if you have not categorized it the right way, you would not get
mm.
shit. You would not win
Oh, that's
shit.
interesting. Yeah, so you have to decide like if it's business, if it's comedy, entertainment, early on. Like, so what happens if you pivot and you want to decide to go a different direction? Do you have to change the categorization like formally or?
Yeah, that's really interesting because I am not actually pivoted away from what I generally do. Okay, so I don't think there should be a problem because if you do pivot away, I'm guessing you would do X, Y, Z episodes. Or what I would do is I would start off saying that, guys, we will be doing a sequence of shows focused on these topics. So, series 1, season 1, episode 1 to 12 will be focused on healthcare. Season 2, we would be focusing on comedy. Season 3, we would be focusing on this. Season 4, stuff like that. The whole essence of what you would be doing, like there would be some sort of structure to what you are trying to execute out of it. So like for if you ask me, like the core concept of my show is business, because I find business to be very fascinating. I wish there was some sort of dedicated guy helping me with different information of what the hell people are doing around the world. Think about it. When I interview these individuals, they come up with their unique perspective of how they conduct business and how they have become successful. Shit, I want a piece of that because that's going to help me explore, learn a lot more, and implement probably some of those ideas in my business and grow and scale. And if I do end up having ever a client who is also in the same field as theirs, we can share ideas how we can make them a success. So it's like a win-win for a lot of things, and that's why I keep doing it. So
Yeah,
anyway,
I
guys.
remember you've had some major guests on, which is really cool. I think maybe the next part of it you could focus on how you book guests as well, because I think that's very interesting how you were able to get some big names actually.
Yeah, yeah. I want to tell you the truth, Rose. I personally don't like those big guests anymore. I used to be
Oh.
fascinated with them, and I think most people are fascinated having big guests. I've realized that it does not necessarily affect the show the way you like to. Just because, but yeah, you might think, or we normally assume, by having high profile guests, there is a possibility the opposite person's audience would come and listen and engage with you, and in that medium you might get more traction and momentum. And there is some truth to it, I'm not saying no. But the thing is, the guest whom you're interviewing, the high profile guest, should also treat you the same way as you're treating them. Like, go on social media, give a shout out, or say that I'm going to be here, please join in. If the guest disregards you completely, I'm not saying my guests have done that, but if they disregard you and they don't do any promotion, this is as good as you not having them on the show. So if you're having an influential guest, they should also treat you exactly the same way you want to be treated. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to do any justice. That's just my point
Yeah,
of view.
that's interesting. That's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
No problem, no problem. So let's actually wrap up today's show. I want to thank each and everyone for listening to my bullshit. I hope you learned something from this. The recording would be available in a couple of hours, either today or tomorrow, wherever. I love you guys. Please take care of yourself. I know it's messy, but behind the mess, behind the chaos, that's where the beauty lies, because not everybody can walk this path. And that makes it special. So take care. Have a lovely morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you're in the world. Take care.
Bye.